total revenue. So we did cost in the last video, so now we're going to look at, and again, we're going to keep revenue simple. If you go on to business calc in the next semester, they'll look at revenue in the more complex set. We're going to look at revenue in its simplest form. Alright, and so we're going to look at revenue as a one business transaction where you receive a gross proceeds. Means it's when you sell the item for a certain price, that's what the gross proceeds is. So for each item you sell it for $50, the $50 is the revenue generated from that item. Alright, that's what we're doing. So it's linear revenue is just simply how many items I'm selling times the price I'm selling them at. Right? In its simplest case, that's what revenue is. And we're going to look at it in its simplest case. Alright, so linear revenue is literally price times quantity, where X is the quantity, X represents our variable, is the number of items we sell, price is the slope. And so for our revenue, we keep it simple. It's revenue is price times quantity, where my slope is the price and X is the number of items produced. And that's it. It doesn't get any more complex than that in our version of revenue. Again, we keep it in the simplest form. If you go on to other classes, they'll talk about revenue in its more complex form. We don't. It is just price for your item, quantity for your item. So it's the gross proceeds from selling your item at a given price. Alright, so we're going to look at application. I'm going to pair it with cost, because usually we look at revenue and cost together, and that'll lead us to profit, which is the last equation we're going to look at. Well, not the last one, but the last one of these types. So a company sells, suppose they sell burner phones, alright? So they have cheap cellular phones that are sold at, your Walgreens or your Walmart or whatever. Alright, the company has a fixed charge for production or supply of these particular phones is $3,600. Marginal cost is $33 per phone. That's the cost per phone. And they plan to mark it up and sell their phones for $78 per phone. Alright, so that's their selling price. So cost and revenue. And so this one is simply, there's no algebra to do. There's just you remembering what all the parts they're giving to you. They're giving you everything you need to know. So cost, which we talked about in the last video, is, remember, marginal cost times our variable plus our fixed cost. Well, they gave me. They told me what the fixed cost was, and they told me what my marginal cost was. So cost is just making sure you're careful and you plug those in. 33 is the cost per phone, so 33 is my slope. And fixed cost was $3,600. And there is my cost equation. So no work to be done. And that one was just, they gave me everything, I just need to make sure I plug it in the correct pieces. And now the revenue, and the revenue is really just easy, but sometimes things are so easy students like to overthink them. In this class, revenue is in its most basic form. It is just price times quantity. Price is the slope, quantity is your variable X. And so revenue is slope times X, where slope is the price. And so in this case, we're selling each of our phones for a marked up price of $78, and so every phone we sell, we generate $78 in revenue. Right, there's my so again, no algebra, it's just you remember where all the numbers go, which again sometimes can be challenging. It's really easy for students to mix those around. Right, next question, which is actually a very important one. How many cell phones do they need to sell in order for cost to equal revenue? And then we'll get to why is that important? Why do we want to figure that out? Alright, so we want to know how many cell phones. So we're looking for X, right? That's the number of phones. When cost equals revenue. And so I'm going to take my cost equation, set it equal to my revenue equation. So my cost was 33X plus 3,600. My revenue was just 78X. Solve for my X, so I'm going to move 33 over. 33X to the other side. And then divide by 45. And so X equals whatever 3,000 divided by 45 is, so 80. So revenue equals cost when they sell 80 phones. Alright? why is that important? What does that tell us? And so what this is, when cost equals revenue, this is what's called in finance the break even point. Meaning our sales, when they sell 80 phones, they've covered all of their costs, meaning they've covered the $33 for each phone, and they've sold enough phones to cover the fixed cost, which is actually fairly large in this example, 3,600. And so it would take 80 phones for them to break even, meaning they want to sell, they need to sell more than 80 phones to get a profit, to make money. If they sell less than 80 phones, they're losing money. They're bleeding cost. So it means their sales are not overcoming their cost. So they're in the negative in that case. Which leads us to the next function, which is the profit function. Alright, so the profit function is what we're going to talk about in the next video. So we did a really short one on revenue because revenue is fairly simple. We'll do more because revenue is going to be a part of the profit function. So revenue is just price times a quantity. Alright, so there's not a whole lot to revenue. And so I only did one example of revenue, but when we do the next case, which is the profit case, we'll do more revenue because in order to get to profit, we need to get our revenue equation. Alright, and so we'll pick that up in the next video.